It's not just about weight. EVs can accelerate faster than traditional cars because they have more torque. If you combine these two aspects alone, you can see why EVs can be deadlier on the road. Electric trucks are the big rage now. Exactly how much more dangerous are they when compared to combustion engine trucks? Here's something most people don't know. EV trucks aren't just heavier than combustion engine trucks, but in fact, the average EV truck can be anywhere from 20, 30, or even 50% heavier. Take the 2022 Ford F-150 Lightning, for example. It weighs 6,500 pounds. To be clear, it's 35% heavier than the gas-powered model. Or look at the 2022 GMC Hummer EV. That beast weighs 9,063 pounds. That's more than 4.5 tons. The battery alone is almost 3,000 pounds, which is a third of its total weight. Needless to say, this is GM's heaviest vehicle to date. Compare that to the last Hummer 3, which weighed a tad over 5,000 pounds. Being in a car crash is bad enough as it is. But now, imagine getting hit by a truck that's 4.5 tons. Basically, it's like getting hit by an elephant. The thing is, Americans love trucks. As the combustion engine ban approaches, we can only expect to see more electric trucks on the roads. And that's the very problem. If you haven't already been in a car crash, chances are you know somebody who has. Did you know there are 5 main types of car collisions? So which ones are the most fatal? Well, most people are familiar with rear-end collisions. Injuries are usually more serious for passengers in a car that gets rear-ended as opposed to passengers in the car behind. Then there's side impact collisions. This is also called a T-bone collision because when a car directly hits your side from a right angle, it forms the shape of a T. Then we got side swipes. This collision happens when the adjacent side of two vehicles touch or swipe each other while one or both cars are moving. The damage is usually just cosmetic and not as fatal. Then there's head-on collisions when two cars ram into each other head-on, usually at high speed. This can be extremely fatal. And of course, there's the multiple vehicle pileup. This collision involves many vehicles and usually happens on a highway. Imagine your car getting hit multiple times from multiple directions. Cars can even spin during this type of collision, causing even more injury to the passengers on board. And passengers who decide to leave their cars can still be hit by oncoming vehicles. Of all the various types of collisions, the side impact is the deadliest. In contrast, head-on collisions can be very serious, but it's usually less fatal than side impact collisions. That's why side impact collisions make up a whopping 21% of all automobile-related fatalities. That's almost a quarter. Intersections, parking lots, and on highways or other high-traffic roads are where side impact crashes most often occur. Other injuries that can occur in this collision are whiplash and concussions. More severe injuries include spinal cord injuries and broken bones that disrupt blood flow to crucial organs like lungs, intestines, kidneys, and the spleen. Because of the severity of this type of collision, consumer groups have been applying pressure on car manufacturers for better solutions. In fact, that's why we see more and more car and truck manufacturers installing side airbags, now more than ever before. But not all do it. So take my advice on this. Always consider the safety features offered by any car model before you purchase a vehicle. It literally could save your life. One of the most leading causes of car crashes is when a driver is using his phone. 1 out of every 4 car accidents in the U.S. is caused by texting while driving. Did you know that texting while driving is 6 times more likely to get you in an accident than driving drunk? That's literally how serious it is. The next time you're on the road, just watch the drivers around you. It's incredibly sad how many still text despite these statistics. If you're one of these drivers who text, please put the phone down. Believe me, the text message can wait. It's not worth risking your life or the lives of others. Every year, smartphone users while driving lead to 1.6 million crashes, 390,000 injuries. On average, answering a text takes your attention away from the road for about 5 seconds. If you're traveling at 55 miles an hour, that's enough time for your car to travel the length of a football field. And now let's look at another factor that impacts the severity of a crash, and that's the weight of a vehicle. The less mass a car has to move, the better it handles. Here's the physics behind it. A vehicle's kinetic energy is equal to half its mass multiplied by the square of its speed. Basically, kinetic energy relates to how fast your car is traveling when it's in motion. The heavier your car, the higher its kinetic energy, and the harder it is to get it to slow down. Powerful engines and smart dampers are useful for starting and swerving, but you can't ignore a car's mass when it's time to slow down or stop. Heavy cars need bigger brakes and longer braking distances. For every 450 kilograms that gets added to a car, it becomes 40% more likely to turn into an otherwise survivable crash into a fatal collision. In 2020 alone, more than 4,000 people died in large large truck crashes. 15% of these deaths were passengers inside the trucks. But get this, 68% were passengers inside other passenger vehicles, and 16% were pedestrians, motorcyclists, or bicyclists. We all know that the 2035 combustion engine ban is fast approaching. So what will happen as more EV trucks at our roads? Will we see more fatal crashes? My personal guess is sadly yes, for all the reasons I just mentioned. Because of this, car manufacturers need to continue working on EV safety features to prevent the number of fatalities from rising as more EVs hit the road. One such major feature is the crumple zone, also known as the crush zone. Crumple zones are areas of a vehicle that are designed to deform and crumple in the event of a collision. Its purpose is to absorb some of the energy of the impact and protect the passengers. But remember, heavy EVs have a lot of kinetic energy. More advanced designs require careful engineering of these zones to absorb as much kinetic energy as possible. This can be done by using a variety of metals and other materials in their construction. This would address the impact of the passengers inside the EV truck. But here's something no one talks about. What about your average combustion engine sedan on the road? What happens when the heavy EV truck hits that? Are car makers of combustion engine cars adapting their crumple zones to account for heavier EVs? So far, I haven't heard anything about this, but I sure hope someone addresses it soon. In my opinion, it's likely that crash test ratings will also have to be recalibrated to account for EVs. When it comes to crash test ratings, more stars means safer cars. The 5-star safety ratings program basically evaluates how vehicles perform in crash tests. They are conducted by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Insurance Institute for Safety Highway. They conduct these tests with frontal, side, and rollover crashes. These test ratings are regularly recalibrated, and when it happens, the auto industry as a whole gets affected. For example, in 2016, they added automatic emergency braking systems to the list of recommended technologies for prevention of high-speed and rear-end crashes. By 2022, automakers had committed to making this a standard in all vehicles. But now let's talk about automated driving systems, also known as automated vehicles. So let's break down these levels. Level 0 is for manually controlled vehicles. Basically, I'm talking about technology like emergency braking systems. Criteria is only that the humans operate the system. Level 1 is the lowest level of automation. Think of things like cruise control. While cruise control does keep your car at a constant speed, you still need a human driver to monitor the steering and braking, for example. Level 2 is for partial driving automation. This means advanced driving systems control both the steering, the accelerating, and decelerating. For example, Tesla Autopilot and GM's Cadillac Super Cruise systems both qualify as Level 2. Level 3 is for conditional driving automation. These vehicles have environmental detection capabilities, but they still require a human driver to remain alert and ready if they ever need to take control of the vehicle. Level 4 is for high driving automation. In most circumstances, these cars would not require human interaction, but drivers would have the option to manually override. Level 4 vehicles can operate in self-driving mode and are geared toward ride shares like Lyft or Uber, except taken up a few notches. And finally, Level 5 is for vehicles with full driving automation. These vehicles will not require human attention. That's why these vehicles won't even need steering wheels, accelerators, or braking pedals. Most people have heard about Tesla's autopilot feature, but actually, this feature is not as wonderful as you might think. Automated driving systems aren't a cure-all. A U.S. federal agency started investigating a crash involving a Tesla Model S that ended up killing 3 people. The thing is, this Tesla may have been operating in autopilot at the time of collision. The accident occurred in Newport Beach, California. One minute, the Tesla was driving on autopilot, but then out of nowhere, the Tesla hit a curb and slammed into construction equipment. The car was completely totaled. Crazily enough, this is one of over 30 crashes being investigated by NHTSA, and all of these crashes potentially involved autopilot. Autopilot has been ruled out in only 3 of the 35 special crash investigations into Tesla since 2016. In all these investigations, a total of 14 crash deaths were reported. You're probably thinking that autopilot is sounding less and less safe by the minute. So what started all these NHTSA special crash investigations of systems like autopilot? Well, it all began back in 2016. That was after a fatal accident in Florida. This accident involved another Tesla Model S that also had autopilot activated. Tesla's official website says that current autopilot features require active driver supervision and that autopilot doesn't make the vehicle autonomous. But the company's branding has been accused of misleading drivers when it comes to their vehicle's capabilities. Just think about the name Autopilot itself, or how they brand it as full self-driving software. Tesla's technology is nowhere near level 6 in full autonomy or full self-driving. Yet its naming, marketing, and branding conveys that. And that's what's giving drivers a false sense of security. EV charging generally has been cheaper than filling up a car with gasoline or diesel, but charging costs are rising, and it's all over the map. The average residential electricity rate spiked 8% in January compared to last year. That was the largest annual increase in 10 years. In Florida, Hawaii, Illinois, and New York, electricity rates went up 15%. A typical electric sedan can go go 3 to 4 miles for every kilowatt hours. Needless to say, electric trucks and SUVs get less. If you were to compare an EV to a 25 mile per gallon car, you could think of 7 kilowatt hours like being 1 gallon of gasoline. Right now, the most cost-effective way of charging your EV is at home. That's because residential electricity rates can be much lower than their public charger counterparts, which can be 2 to 4 times higher. But electricity prices are going up, not only across the country, but also across the world. Specific at-home charging costs really depend on your location, your energy supplier, and the energy plan you're presently on. But lower charging costs aren't the only benefit of at-home EV charging. It's also more convenient. More EVs driving on the roads could mean more time wasted waiting to charge at a public station. EV charging prices are soaring. Some believe the purchase price of an EV might come down in the near future, but only assuming we don't face problems with EV battery shortages. EV batteries are expensive to make, but with charging costs increasing, some aren't charging their EVs as much as they should. As you can imagine, that's causing some problems, like EVs running out of juice in the middle of the highway. One experienced tow truck driver estimated that 1 out of every 5 cars stranded on the road were electric cars that ran out of juice, where the other 4 were traditional combustion engine cars that ran out of gas. Typically, the EV owners ran out because they forgot to charge their car, or they were driving too far between charges. Last year, there was a poll that was conducted. Believe it or not, the average American believed that 65% of EV breakdowns are caused by EVs running out of juice. Now you can see why so many have range anxiety. But here's the truth of the matter. It turns out that in reality, only 4% of EV breakdowns are due to batteries gone flat. The majority of reasons are usually the tires or other reasons. Compare that to combustion engine cars. According to AAA, about half of roadside assistance calls each year are from drivers who just ran out of gasoline. So what should you do if this nightmare happens to you with an electric car? Well, don't panic. Also, if you have roadside assistance like AAA, they can tow your car to the nearest charging station. Some of the AAA trucks carry an onboard fast charger that can add 10 miles of range in 30 minutes. Remember though, the vehicle's range can be affected by other things like running the car's heater or air conditioning, or even how fast you drive. So what you should do if you're on the road and notice your EV is running low on battery. First, drive slower. Also, turn off any auxiliary features inside the car to keep hold of its energy as long as possible. When it comes to EV batteries in general, don't ever charge it all the way to 100%. It's not a good idea. In fact, even car brands will caution you about this. The average EV has a battery management system inside. This system prevents the car from being charged and discharged at the extreme state of charge. It's true, technically, having your battery fully charged will give you the maximum operating time, but going to this frequently will inevitably reduce the battery's ability to retain a charge over time. It'll also reduce the overall lifespan of your battery. It's like a laptop. Laptops lose battery capacity if they're plugged in all the time. General rule of thumb is to charge at 80% at most. Of course, here and there you might have an occasional longer trip planned and you're getting range anxiety. It might be okay to charge it to the max for those one-off trips. What's the lowest recommended battery level you should reach before recharging? With your EV, it's best to let the capacity run down to 20% or even 10% before you charge it back up. How does this compare with smartphone batteries? Well, the fundamentals of a smartphone battery and EV battery are pretty much the same, but the significant difference is in how they're charged or discharged. Smartphone batteries don't have this built-in charging buffer like EVs do. This means you can never really drain to a 20% or charge them to a true 100%. One reason is because battery degradation isn't as crucial when it comes to a smartphone. Also, the average American replaces their smartphone every 3 years. Consider, too, that when they do replace their phone, it's a much lower purchase price cost than buying an EV car. Did you know that many EV makers provide a standard 8-year or 100,000-mile battery warranty? This warranty will cover a certain amount of battery degradation during that time. Since you shouldn't charge your EV to 100%, should you charge it every night? Many people have range anxiety with a fear that the EV battery will run out on them. Because of this, they charge their car every night just to be safe. The same as they charge their cell phone by the nightstand every single night. But look, with cars, this really isn't necessary. In fact, it can damage your car's battery. The reason is repeatedly charging and discharging causes lithium-ion batteries to degrade over time. So imagine what charging at 365 days a year every year would do to it. Every time a battery gets charged, that charging cycle puts stress on the battery. And that applies whether you're adding 5% or 55% of the charge. This is another reason why you should get familiar with your EV's driving range. It'll help you know how often to charge your battery and for how long. Ever wonder why we don't see solar panels on the roof of EVs? If you were to put solar panels on an EV, they can convert just 15 to 20% of the energy coming from the sun. Hypothetically, these solar panels would only give you about 3 miles of energy in 1 hour of charging. So it's just not worth it. And don't forget the sky-high cost of installing solar panels. We're talking about an extra $6,000, and that doesn't even include maintenance costs. And don't forget that EVs are already much heavier than standard combustion engines, so adding solar panels on top of that isn't such a smart idea. Battery electric vehicles and hybrid started popping up in the early part of the 21st century. Along with them came regenerative braking technology. Regenerative braking allows an EV to transform the kinetic energy of the car into electrical energy, and then that energy is used to recharge your car's battery while you're on the road. When you take your foot off the accelerator, the regenerative braking system kicks in. Some people wonder if regenerative braking can sufficiently and regularly charge your EV. Well, the short answer is no. The point of a regenerative braking system isn't about fully charging your EV. This system doesn't make EVs more efficient per se. It just makes them less inefficient, and it doesn't replace your vehicle's traditional brakes either. A regenerative braking system helps your car to slow down, but eventually you'll need to press the brake pedal to get the vehicle to come to a complete or even sudden stop. That said, you need to balance that out with other disadvantages. For instance, if you do need to replace or repair the EV battery, well, the battery is the most expensive component of an EV. So, you better hope the cause of damage allows you to be covered under the car's warranty. Otherwise, it will be super expensive. But now, you tell me, do you think electricity costs will rise to the point where charging your EV will be as high as pumping gas? Please share by commenting below. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for your support.